At first glance, it may seem that some people are simply born lucky or have the privilege of living in constant flow. But in truth, the difference is not luck, it is the signal they emit. Life does not respond to frantic effort, nor to mechanically repeated phrases. It responds to the stable frequency you sustain in your body, your heart, and your mind. When thoughts, emotions, and identity are misaligned, the field returns confusion. You may declare that you want prosperity, but if your body vibrates with anxiety and your mind rehearses lack, the dominant signal remains scarcity. And that is what comes back as a coherent echo of the real emission. Bruce Lipton explains that the body reads the internal environment and translates beliefs into cellular chemistry. Thus, it is not only what you consciously think that matters, but above all, what silently vibrates in your nervous system. Joe Dispenza adds, "When the heart and brain come into coherence, a clear electromagnetic field is formed, and it is this that reorganizes circumstances around you." Shifting stations, or even dimensions, is not a mystical leap. It is a practical adjustment. It is learning to align the inner state until life stops reflecting pleading and begins mirroring identity. Those who live in coherence don't need to convince the universe. They simply transmit, and the field responds. In this text, we will reveal how this process happens without empty mysticism. You will understand what it truly means to change frequency in an objective way. Step by step, we will see how to adjust thought, emotion, and identity so that the future is no longer something you chase, but something that emerges as a natural consequence of who you already are. Many people believe they are stuck because they lack strategy, talent, or resources. But in truth, the blockage rarely lies in external tools. The crucial point is the frequency you emit. If your internal signal says lack, the field cannot return abundance. It only returns lack, because that is what is being sustained as vibrational truth. You can plan perfectly, study every technique, apply proven formulas, but if behind each step there is still the feeling of scarcity, the universe receives that signature as the primary command. The form may be correct, but the essence remains misaligned. Bruce Lipton shows, in his studies on epigenetics, that the body responds to the internal environment created by emotions. In other words, even in favorable circumstances, if the dominant state is fear, biology interprets the world as a threat, and life reflects that same pattern. Joe Dispenza reinforces that change only becomes real when you teach the body a new emotional state. It is not enough to think differently, you must feel differently. The brain and heart in coherence create a clean signal that leaves no room for contradiction. This is why, before seeking new external strategies, you must adjust the internal frequency. Ask yourself, what is my body emitting right now? Expansion or contraction? Trust or scarcity? That silent answer matters more than any plan, because it is what determines how the quantum field will organize your next experiences. Reality works like a radio with multiple stations. Each station already exists, broadcasting its program. You don't create the frequency, you tune in. In the same way, there is no need to fabricate opportunities out of nothing. They are already available, but only become visible when your inner state turns the dial to the right station. If the dominant signal is fear, your perception automatically filters the world to find reasons to fear. If it is scarcity, you only notice bills, debts, and lack. But when your body vibrates in safety and openness, the same environment begins to reveal opportunities, connections, and synchronicities that were invisible before. Bruce Lipton teaches that our perceptions shape the way we interpret reality. What the body recognizes as normal becomes the lens through which we see everything. Joe Dispenza complements this by showing that when thought and emotion align, we create an electromagnetic signature that literally changes our filters of perception. The beauty lies in realizing that this is not about luck or chance. It is fine-tuning. The external world does not suddenly change. It is your internal receiver that calibrates and begins to capture higher frequencies. Reality ceases to be static and reveals itself as a malleable field, responding to your tuning. Thus, the key is not to ask for new stations, but to learn to turn the dial of your attention. By changing frequency, you do not force the universe to meet your demand. You begin to perceive what was already available, waiting only for your openness to be seen. One of the greatest causes of frustration in the transformation process is internal contradiction. The mind declares a desire, but the body vibrates something else. It's like trying to hear music on a radio full of static. No matter how much you turn up the volume, the sound remains distorted. When someone thinks positively but keeps the body tense and the heart closed, the field does not read the phrase but the dominant state. The words may sound beautiful, but the vibration being repeated is that of anxiety, fear, or urgency. The universe does not respond to the speech, it responds to the coherent signal. Bruce Lipton explains that the subconscious, loaded with old beliefs, governs up to 95% of our biological and emotional responses. This means that repeating affirmations without resolving inner tensions keeps the contradiction alive. The body continues emitting the signal of the past, even while the mind speaks of the future. Joe Dispenza shows that by bringing awareness to this conflict, we activate the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for observation and reorganization. Observing without judgment is the first step to dissolving incoherence. When you recognize, I am affirming trust, but I feel fear, you create space to align the two poles. Easing the contradiction is worth more than accumulating techniques. The true practice is not to add more layers of positive, but to dissolve the noise that keeps the signal divided. When mind and body stop contradicting each other, the frequency stabilizes, and the field can finally respond with clarity. Most people live in reactive mode, waiting for the world to organize itself before they can feel safe, loved, or confident. This pattern always places power outside of oneself. The turning point happens when you decide to invert the logic, to generate the inner state first, so that life responds afterward. This is not about denying facts, but about realizing that the field organizes circumstances around vibrational coherence. When you sustain gratitude even in the midst of challenge, when you find calm instead of merging with chaos, you are emitting a clean signature that reorganizes reality around you. Bruce Lipton shows that emotions are not merely subjective experiences. They modulate cellular chemistry. Consciously choosing higher states creates an internal environment where new possibilities become biologically plausible. The creator's turning point begins in the body. Joe Dispenza adds that heart-brain coherence is not a metaphor, but a measurable fact. When this harmony is established, the electromagnetic field around the body expands and influences matter. The creator does not wait for external proof. They become the proof. This turning point is a place of no return. You stop reacting to what happens and become the source that generates order in chaos. Life ceases to be a stage you respond to and becomes the living reflection of the state you chose to sustain. We often treat love as something romantic or as a reward when everything goes right. But on a vibrational level, love is a technology of coherence. It organizes the field because it represents intrinsic safety, openness, and presence. It is less about fleeting emotion and more about a state of inner order. When the heart enters a state of love, understood as acceptance and connection, the heart rhythm becomes coherent, breathing harmonizes, and the nervous system relaxes. This internal alignment emits a clear signal that influences the environment around you, bringing synchronicities, encounters, and clarity of action. Bruce Lipton explains that cells flourish in environments of safety and collapse in environments of fear. Love in this sense is not an abstract ideal, but the biological chemistry of trust that allows the body to expand. When we choose love, we reorganize biology and open space for new possibilities. Joe Dispenza shows in his studies that the state of gratitude and love, measured through heart coherence, expands the electromagnetic signature around the body. This means that such a state not only affects the interior, but literally sends an ordered signal into the quantum field. Love, therefore, is a daily practice of alignment. It doesn't need performance or a perfect setting. Just a few minutes of conscious breathing, hand over the heart, evoking real memories of gratitude. This simple gesture is a powerful technology to adjust the signal and reorganize your reality. There is a common pattern among people who seem to live in constant flow. They don't chase, they emit. They don't waste energy trying to prove or declare what they don't yet have. On the contrary, they choose to sustain an inner state that already corresponds to the desired reality. This is the code of the 1%, not in terms of external wealth, but in vibrational frequency. While the majority are busy repeating to the universe the message, "When it arrives, I will feel good," this small group inverts the logic. They feel first and then observe the reflection. It's not about denying the present, but about adjusting the signature that is being transmitted. Bruce Lipton explains that the body responds to the coherence of the state. When the internal narrative is aligned, cellular chemistry adapts to this new environment. It's like teaching each cell to expect new possibilities instead of repeating old survival patterns. Joe Dispenza reinforces that consistency is what collapses probabilities into form. An intention sustained, accompanied by elevated emotion, creates stable neural circuits. This stability creates a magnetic field that organizes experiences compatible with the new state. The code of the 1% is not about excessive effort, but about the consistent choice to inhabit the frequency of already is. This silent assuming repeated day after day is what opens doors, accelerates synchronicities, and transforms probabilities into reality. What you attract is not tied to what you want, but to what you are. Desires may be intense, but if the baseline identity is still linked to scarcity, fear, or rejection, life will respond to that set point. Identity is vibrational signature, a silent pattern that informs the field about who is emitting the signal. That's why so many people call the return to old patterns self-sabotage. In practice, it is not sabotage, but coherence with an identity that has not yet been updated. You may achieve something new, but if the emotional thermostat remains set to the old, reality reorganizes itself to return to the familiar point. Bruce Lipton explains that the subconscious stores inherited beliefs and repeated experiences, shaping the perception of who we believe we are. This program directly influences biology, body chemistry, and even automatic behaviors. Identity, therefore, is not abstract. It is physiology in action. Joe Dispenza adds that by daily rehearsing the state of the new self, we create new neural circuits that sustain a different identity. It is not about faking it until you make it, but about training the body to recognize as normal what once seemed improbable. Updating your identity is, therefore, the key. More than repeating phrases of desire, it is choosing to feel and act as one who already is. When the vibrational signature changes, the field has no choice but to reflect the new emission. The human brain has a system called the RAS, reticular activating system. It works as a selective filter, deciding, among billions of stimuli, what deserves your attention. And this filter is not neutral. It is calibrated by what you repeat with emotion. If your inner narrative revolves around fear or scarcity, the RAS will highlight precisely the signals that confirm that state. You will notice the bills, the problems, the risks, but when the body learns to sustain gratitude, trust, or love, that same filter begins to prioritize opportunities, solutions, and encounters that were previously invisible. Bruce Lipton shows that our beliefs create the biological environment that sustains the perceptual filter. In other words, your biology reinforces what you believe to be real. Joe Dispenza complements this by explaining that the intentional training of new emotional states teaches the brain to create different internal maps, which guide the RAS to select evidence compatible with the desired future. This means the external world is, to a great extent, perceptual editing. What you see confirms what you vibrate. Adjusting focus is therefore adjusting the vibrational lens, not to deny what exists, but to emphasize what expands instead of what contracts. Recurring focus instructs your perception, which instructs your field. It is neuroscience in service of the quantum. You don't need to create new realities by force. You simply need to train your filter to recognize and legitimize what is already available at another frequency. We live in a culture that values the appearance of being in control more than the coherence of being present. But in the vibrational field, it is not performance that moves reality. It is presence. The universe does not respond to the effort of convincing, but to the silent clarity of someone who sustains a stable state. Attachment and urgency create noise. When you act to prove something, even unconsciously, you are emitting lack. It is like trying to broadcast a beautiful song in the midst of constant interference. The field does not distinguish your declared intentions. It only reads the dominant signal, anxiety or trust, urgency or serenity. Bruce Lipton explains that the body perceives the difference between coherence and forced effort. Authentic emotions of gratitude or peace reorganize cellular chemistry, while attempts at performance keep the system in stress. Joe Dispenza adds that in states of heart coherence, the electromagnetic signature becomes stable without the need for performative intensity. Magnetic presence is not passivity. It is action without begging for proof, gesture made from a state of wholeness. Those who sustain presence emit a consistent signal that naturally attracts compatible circumstances. Life aligns because it recognizes the stability of the emission. Thus, the invitation is simple: less performance, more presence. It is not about making more noise, but about allowing your frequency to speak for you. It is this coherent stillness that opens doors effortlessly, because it already carries within itself the vibrational proof of what you are. When we talk about other dimensions, many imagine something distant, almost unattainable. But from the perspective of the quantum field, dimension is not a place, it is a state. Each dimension is a frequency available now, waiting only for your identity, emotion, and attention to converge in order to become visible. This means that shifting dimensions is not traveling to another space, but changing your point of resonance. When you sustain fear, the available dimension is one of conflict and scarcity. When you sustain love and trust, the dimension that opens is one of abundance and flow. Bruce Lipton shows that beliefs determine which realities become biologically possible. If your core belief is limitation, your body and your life remain inside that universe. But by changing perception, cellular ecology also changes, and new lines of possibility become accessible. Joe Dispenza adds, by aligning clear intention and elevated emotion, you bend timelines. Doors once invisible become obvious because your brain and heart begin to recognize what was previously out of reach. The dimension did not arrive. You simply became compatible with it. Thus, dimensions are states of availability. What changes is not the world itself, but the part of it you can access through the signature you emit. When your frequency stabilizes, flow replaces friction, and life reveals paths that were always there, waiting for you to become able to see them. Life does not reward disordered effort or memorized phrases. The field responds only to the signal you sustain consistently. When mind, heart, and body enter coherence, reality reorganizes as a reflection of that state. There is no mystery. The world is a mirror of the emission you transmit. Bruce Lipton shows that our beliefs shape the cellular environment. Each repeated emotion, each recurring perception, instructs the cells on what to expect from life. Joe Dispenza complements, when that state is coherent, a clean electromagnetic field is created that organizes circumstances around it. By trading reaction for the creation of state, you stop begging for external proof and begin to emit the signature of the already is. This simple yet profound shift is what transforms probabilities into synchronicities, coincidences into confirmations, effort into flow. It is not about convincing the universe, but about remembering the inner code that already exists in you. When the frequency of trust and presence becomes natural, life begins to respond predictably. The future ceases to be a distant promise and becomes an embodied experience. The call is clear: abandon the rush, embrace coherence. Replace the urgency of performance with the magnetic stillness of presence. Because in the end, reality is not something you chase, it is something that responds with precision to what you decide to be.